All right, people, it is Unit 2, Mod 8, our last module of the unit. Let's get started. Look at this vocab list. Does that not make you excited? Only 3 vocab. I mean, this video should be like 3 minutes long, but it's not. So, applied psychology. Let's talk about this first and then ethics. So this means when we are applying psychology, we are taking what we've learned in the research labs and applying it to everyday life. So first off, can we do this? Can we take stuff that we've learned in the lab and actually apply it to everyday life and have it still make sense? Is it still true? What they find when they investigate this is yes, we can take the general principles of what we learn in psychological research. All right, so quickly, what about our differences? So things that we can generalize, some things, but hey, like culturally we're so different, or gender makes us act differently. Yes, you're right. We need to be critical thinkers and look at representative samples used in studies and see, do they have a true representation of the population they are intending to study. So one thing that is noteworthy is that most psychological research uses participants from weird cultures. So weird in this context means Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. So if you look over in the graphic, you can see that a large percentage of, well over a majority, right, of participants in psychological research are weird. So these are the cultures that fund and have interest in psychological research, and so it does skew the data. But one thing that is true, so beyond gender, beyond culture, is that we are so similar biologically, and we are much, much more similar than we are different. So biology unites us. A smile everywhere is universal, for example. There are many things about us that are universal. So when we are conducting research in the United States, there is something called the American Psychological Association. In other countries, it has a different name, different organization. For example, the British Psychological Society is in the UK. So the APA lays out ethical guidelines that every research study must follow. So how it works is you write up your research study and you submit it to an independent review board. So this independent review board looks over everything in your study, how you're going to do it, the procedure, everything, the materials used, everything. And they are making sure that you follow the ethical guidelines. And so the key ethical guidelines that you need to know are, number 1, informed consent. So informed consent means that if I'm going to be a participant in a study, I need to be aware of what I'm going to be exposed to, what I'm going to be expected to do. For example, if I'm going to have to go run on a treadmill, or I'm going to have to respond to texts throughout my day, whatever it is, I need to be informed about it from the beginning. I also need to be protected as a participant from physical and emotional harm and discomfort. So that is to be prevented. That is unethical. Also, my information, so the data that comes out that is particular to me, must remain confidential. Obviously, with research, we're going to use the overall data, but my name cannot be connected to my data. And then finally, at the end of any sort of research, the participants must be debriefed. So debriefing means to go over what the data showed, anything that went on during the study that I might not have been aware of. Sometimes, for example, they have to use deception. So they can only use deception if it is necessary. And in many cases, it is necessary. So, for example, if I'm trying to do research on how a survey question could influence your answer, I'm not going to tell you that I'm trying to see if this question, the way it's worded, will influence your answer, because that alone, that information, will alter my results and make them not useful. So if I've been deceived in any way, I have to be debriefed after. So why do we use animals in research? So, first of all, humans are animals, but humans are complex beings, whereas sea slugs, for example, we can see neural workings they're very simplistic in a sea slug, so we can see them very easily. And same with rats, they're less complex than humans, so it makes it easier to conduct research. We can also use lab settings for animals, whereas we cannot use, in some cases, depending on what we're doing, cannot use lab research for humans. And there are some other arguments that the text lays out as to why people believe that it is, or they kind of justify it. They talk about how research animals are only a fraction of the 1% of the billions of animals who are killed annually for food. They talk about how for every dog or cat that's used in research, there are 50 that are killed in animal shelters. Of course, not all agree with these things, but we feel that psychology uses this and research uses this, and the medical world uses this because we believe that it is a benefit to everyone, including animals. Animals also benefit from psychological research. For example, and there are many examples of this. It's actually a lot of how they learn to create habitats for animals who are injured and need to live in places like, contain places like the zoo. But so one of the studies that they did, they found ways to reduce the stress of dogs in shelters, because shelters are a very chaotic and stressful place for animals. And so using psychological research, they found ways to reduce dogs' stress. It's a certain petting mechanism or method, I should say, that they found to be effective for reducing dog stress. So whenever they are doing studies with animals, they have to make sure that the comfort, the health, and the humane treatment of the animal is of utmost importance. Obviously, these things can happen, but we're trying to minimize any sort of pain, any sort of infection or illness that the animal might experience. They have to recreate the natural habitat as much as they possibly can, and they also have to They also have to live in a habitat with other animals of their species. So those are just some ways that they keep things ethical. So takeaways. So culture and gender make us behave differently, but biology unites us in more ways than we are divided. Animal research, there's a lot of criticism, but it's the reason we are safe from many illnesses, smallpox, rabies, right? The list can go on, and it provides benefits to animals as well. When we are conducting research with humans, we need to make sure that all that research, the research study goes before an IRB, an independent review board, and everyone in the study needs to have informed consent. There should be no harm to the participants. They should be debriefed at the end of the study, and confidentiality should be used with their information. All right, so I hope that you have learned a lot from this module, and this is our last one, so I hope you feel confident and ready to take on the test, and if not, feel free to go back and review any of the other videos or prepare in other ways, because that test is coming.